So our calling number again is 563-999-3581 and press 1. And Magda, I'm going to turn your microphone on just to share with you that we did have a conversation with Arya, and we asked her, we kind of as a reminder, we're like, do you remember when we went to the dinosaur museum and you were asking this little girl questions and she kind of snapped at you, and Arya's reply back was just, well, I was just talking to you. And we said, do you remember that? And she goes, no. And I'm like, you don't remember that? And she's like, no, I don't. And we said, well, okay, do you remember Christmas Eve when we were at your house and we were opening presents and your La La Lolo, which that's her other grandparents, what she calls them, and they were talking in Tagalog, which is their native language, and you kind of, said something to them about, I don't understand you or whatever. Do you remember doing that? No. And we said, okay. Well, so it was like, so then I jumped in and I said, okay, well, let me just say that before that happened at Christmas, I said, I had gotten a phone call from somebody that was trying to sell me something on the phone, and I was kind of not nice, and I said, they don't even know how to talk English. And I had hung up on them. And I said, that wasn't nice. That wasn't kind. I said, so, I need to apologize. I don't know who they are, so I can't apologize to them, but I can apologize to you because you were in the room and you heard me do that. And she says, okay, so there were 3 people that made a mistake. So, even though she was saying she didn't remember the other, she was counting that it was her at Christmas, it was me on the phone, and it was the other little girl at the museum. So she's like, okay, so 3 people made a mistake. And I said, yep, that's true. And I said, and we need to learn from our mistakes, and we need to be kind. And so then Michael has now joined us. So I don't know, Michael, if you want to add something to that. But it was kind of, I don't know if she really didn't remember or she just didn't want to remember or what, but she was like, she didn't remember either of those incidences. And so, to be able to get the conversation in about being kind to other people, then I just said, okay. And so I gave my example of where I was off target. And so hopefully, we'll be able to have deeper conversations around that. But
that was absolutely brilliant. I had forgotten that you said that and modeled that for her, and the fact that you essentially owned it and confessed, if you will, that was wonderful. Because my sense of it is that she was saying, no, I don't remember, because she didn't want to remember.
Right, that's what I figure, is that she didn't want to.
Oh, good for you.
I think you were really making it safe for her to remember, Jeanie, when you were able to own that, when you modeled owning that you made, acknowledging that you made what you perceived as an error, and I think that helped to open the space for her to soften into it.
Right. I agree,
but
and
I
think that's something. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it was really sweet to hear her say, oh, so 3 people made a mistake,
I think that is something that adults really, especially teachers and parents, could do more of, and it would be very beneficial for the kids they are with, is to own up and to say, oh, gosh, I used a pretty shrill tone of voice there. Excuse me, and to be human rather than, because, we're put on a pedestal by the little bitty ones anyway. We're so big, we're so powerful. So for us to say, yeah, I do some things that are less than I would like for them to be, and it gives the kids permission to see us as real and then admit to their realness as well. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Cool.
And it's fun to be playing with her consciously around those issues. It's pretty awesome.
Oh, yeah. How many wonderful things could happen to our world if every child had that kind of parenting. Woohoo! It's a delightful thought. And perhaps a reality at some time.
It certainly excites me to think about how she's experiencing the world at 4 and the differences she's going to make when I think about, I didn't start to conceive of moving this direction for a quarter of a century.
Right.
So to see her, having a handle on it at 4 is pretty awesome. It'll be just fun to watch her grow and see what happens.
And very much fun that you share it with us. I appreciate it so much. Thank you. Okay,
sweet. Well, what's exciting in your world?
I just made some mint chocolate pie cake candy.
No.
Are
you shipping?
No, it melts,
Oh, darn.
I put it in the freezer for its quick freeze. But I added a little raspberry this time to see how that is.
Sounds good. Well, I announced at the beginning of the show that Michael will be coming to Heartland sometime, probably July, and so you'll have to make him some when he gets there.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool.
Are you still making it for yourself? I heard that you
We haven't made it in some time.
Yeah, actually, I was talking about making some the other day, but I didn't get to it. But you inspired me, and we do have some dried mint here that we grew. So I'm thinking about crushing those mint leaves up really finely and putting them in some chocolate and see how that works.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
And he's had to eat all of it by himself because for some reason, for probably 5 or 6 months now, I can't eat chocolate. It gives me heartburn. So it's like he just has to suffer and eat it all.
Yeah, it's really difficult. I have to just devour it. So, but I put on my okay, I'll trudge through this shirt and go for it. It's kind of like that time we were stuck in Hawaii in February.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, you play the victim role very, very well, so I applaud you guys. Well, I will listen now because I'm sure that there's someone who has a wonderful question for you or something to share, and I want to hear it. Okay, so I'm going to.
All right, blessings.
Continue doing the work. Yeah, blessings to you. Bye. Bye.
All right, take care, bye.
Awesome.
Well,
so John's not on, and I told them that I was going to create a separate section on the website about emotions. Right now, the special, the ones that we've already done on shame and guilt are listed under the MP3s, special MP3s, but I will put them also. I'll create another page that's just about emotions and list them there as well. I was telling them about the one coming up yesterday in the Skype call on grief.
From the still point breathing.
No, this was it was a still point breathing. I was thinking yesterday during the Skype call. Yep. We were busy this weekend.
It has been a busy week. I mean, what have we done? 3 different podcasts and the of course, the radio show. And so lots going on, but in the Mind Shifters and Still Point Breathing session this weekend, we had some conversations come up around grief, and so I had promised that I would do a section on the emotions on grief at the beginning of this show so that the participants could be part of that. And I want to kind of review the context of emotions, which I think makes it a whole lot easier to start to move the energy behind our emotions. So recognize that if you're living from your mind, then, or what the world calls your mind, what we call the mind, the resonant function of content stored in brain cells being resonated into activity, is not really a mind. If I say don't think about the color of your car, something resonates in you, something moves in you, and people tend to call that thinking, but it really isn't thinking. We call it the mind, but it isn't. The real mind, the human mind, is the ability to hold love conscious, active, and present, no matter what moves within our physiology, and to be able to bring in something new, different, and alive in the moment, rather than just replicate what's already stored in the mind. If I say, don't think about the color of your car, there's something stored in your mind about the color of your car, and that moves. If I say, what's the front door of your house look like? You've got brain cells. It's something from the past. If I say, what's your favorite food? It's something from the past. Now, if I put my favorite food in my mouth and I just enjoy it, that's a present moment experience. It's alive. And the idea is for us to be alive, not just experiencing the replication of energies from the past moving in us and thinking that's life. So our emotions, or blocked emotions that can flare up in an instant from a mind that often tyrannizes us, is not living. If we're going to truly live as human beings, we need to live from the light and the love that flows underneath those experiences that the replicate mind gives us. The active presence of love that's designed to empower and to power the human mind. If you listen to physicists, even they're saying that underneath the creation, that if we look at matter, it's light energy solidified. Beneath it is this world of light. And so my offering is we're designed to live from that world of light, connected to, and the equivalent word, or another word for that presence of light, is love. So if you regularly live from a mind that tells you that you're mad, or you're sad, or you're afraid, or you're upset because something is happening outside of you, then you're living in denial. And remember our definition of denial. When I think or speak as though something outside of me is the cause of what's moving inside of me, I'm in denial. When I'm in denial, by definition, by saying to myself, that made me mad, I have to dissociate from the real cause, the real energy, the thought disorder behind my painful experience. And when I do that, my mind has to make up a whole false world based on that errant thought, based on a thought disorder. So feeling is the sensation of an energy moving in your field. Emotions are the end result of a resonating field that comes from the impact of mind energy. If you go to the opening words in the book of John, you remember it says, in the beginning was the mind energy, and the mind energy became flesh. It doesn't say in the beginning was the word. So in the beginning was the mind energy. And so my take is, my offering is that the way that this body-mind unit is designed is when mind energy is moving in us, of course, it has to hit a cell to be felt. And when it hits a cell, much if you've ever been out, driving on a country road where there are big power lines, and if you stop and you get out, you hear this hum coming from the wires. Well, that's kind of like emotion. When mind energy hits the cell and flows through into and through the cell, the same way as electricity flowing through those wires moves, that electricity flowing through these wires creates that hum. Well, emotions are nothing more than a reflection of that mind energy moving through those emotions, through those cells, and it warns us or informs us of the quality of our creative process. You've heard me say it many times before. Probably the greatest atrocity done to us as human beings down through the ages, and that we've bought into, is that we've had hidden from us the fact that we are by nature creators. And so when we lose awareness of our creative ability, our emotions, if we put them in the right context, our emotions are an information signal that informs us of the quality of our creative process, the quality of the mind energy that's flowing in our structure. And when we recognize that, then emotion becomes a whole different thing than, oh, look what they did to me, and I'm so sad or afraid or mad, and I'm hurting. Now, recognize that emotions and thoughts are kind of cooked together, and they end up looking like rage and sadness, hate, fear, depression, anxiety, and those things can't be uncooked. And most people try to figure their emotions out. Figuring them out is the number one pseudo solution of the non-being mind, and figuring emotions out is like trying to uncook them. It can't be done. It's like a stew. Once the stew is cooked, you can't separate the carrot flavor from the celery flavor and the celery from the bay leaf. You can't do it. But as each aspect of the complex of emotion is being dealt with in any given moment, is brought to conscious awareness, exposed, focused into, and changed, then that thought can be forgiven. That thought can be removed. And when that thought is removed, then the distortion that comes with it disappears. And so the conversation, as I say, on Saturday in our monthly Mind Shifters and Still Point Breathing session, which, by the way, we do it the second Saturday of every month. And if anybody would like to join that, you can do a single session. You can do a 3-pack session. You can join it for the year. But the thing that came up on Saturday was this idea of grief. And, my offering is that grief is an emotional distress that's inflicted on us by the mind. As a perceptual construct, it's always a reflection of a thought disorder that functionally disconnects us from our awareness of ourselves as love. Grief includes thoughts of injustice, calamity, loss, all based on fearful interpretations of events. Remember, when the fear filter is set in the mind, the only quality of perceptual construct the mind can give you is something that is threatening. Now, my offering is that every event comes to deliver us a gift. But when the gift is interpreted through fear, think of something that maybe happened to you 20, 30, 40 years ago, and when it happened, it was a big trauma, terror, upset, how terrible it was, and you look back at it now and you go, wow, that was one of the best things that ever happened to me. Well, it was one of the best things that happened to you at the time that it happened. Why did somebody wait 20 years to get its gift? Because they were stuck in thought disorders, misinterpreting it, not understanding it. So when these events that come into our lives, we say, I'd rather that didn't happen, and they're interpreted through fear, the mind keeps us stuck in that situation of this is a threat. And when we wake up to different possibilities, then a whole different process occurs. Oftentimes, grief comes up around the experience of death. And it's interesting, in the Aramaic language, the word death means present elsewhere. Let's say you went to a store to see Bill, and Mary was there, and Bill was in their other store. If Mary were Aramaic, she might say, well, Bill is dead. Doesn't mean that he doesn't exist. It means he is present elsewhere. If we think that death is an end, we get stuck in a thought disorder of loss and endings and, whatever complexes are there. So the objective here would be to step into the forgiveness process, surface and confront, bring forward the thought disorder that needs healing, so that the emotion that we're experiencing will come from our true mind, that is, from the ability to hold love conscious, active, and present, rather than from the thought disorders that tend to be generational. They're things that tend to get passed from generation to generation to generation. And you remember the mind shifter tool. And so remember, a mind shifter is a thought about an issue in your life around which you have negative thoughts, and it's the opportunity to surface, process, and release the negative thoughts, to forgive. It's the opportunity to move those things. So the way that a mind shifter is used is that, and I'm going to share a mind shifter around this idea of grief in just a moment, but the way a mind shifter is used is you take a piece of paper and you write the mind shifter on one side of the page, and then you write everything that comes up in response to it on the opposite side of the page. And the idea is to use that mind shifter as a catalyst. In the same way as if I say, don't think about the color of your car, I set up a frequency with my voice that when it hits your eardrum, creates an electrochemical shift inside of you and resonates brain cells related to car. And so those brain cells start to fire. When we use a mind shifter that keys into a thought disorder or a thought complex that is based in disordered thinking, then the mind shifter allows you to start to resonate that particular thought disorder and allow it to come to the surface in a context that's safe and to process through that thought disorder. So the mind shifter that we'll offer here, if you've got your pen and paper ready. If grief surfaces, I remember my true nature. I breathe. As I bring love present in my mind. And heal. All thought disorders related to loss. So once again, a mind shift around grief. If grief surfaces, I remember my true identity. Breathe. As I bring love present to my mind and heal all thought disorders related to loss. And healing them doesn't mean figuring them out. Healing means bringing them forward in the presence of active love. And when you write a mind shifter, and if grief is an issue in your life, I suggest you take a few hours, 2-3 hours, maybe even 4 if it's an important issue, and you spend time writing that mind shifter. And then once you and just make sure the phone is off, make sure you're in your own space, secured, you're not going to be disturbed, and you just write and write and write whatever surfaces. When you run out of things to write in response to that mind shifter, then write it again. And you might write the mind shifter 2, 3, 4, 5 times before thoughts start to flow again. And the idea is to get the thought disorders, and most people, when thought disorders start to move in them, they hold their breath, and that is what locks those energetic patterns into tissue. That's the kind of thing that results in, we talked a few weeks ago about sympathetic dominance. thought disorders based in fear and loss tend to put people, when they're active, tend to put people into a state of sympathetic dominance, where the fear, flight, fright, freeze, and fawning mode of operating physiologically and with the mind takes over. And when that occurs, especially if it's a long-term sort of thing, when that becomes, or if that becomes chronic, then people tend to get stuck in a place where blood flow is continuously shunted to the larger muscles and to the energy flow to the lungs to allow breath to be used and, to empower us to fight, struggle, run, escape. It can also lead to going into freeze mode because it cuts off blood flow literally to the higher centers of the brain. And so moving those thought disorders, those thought energies out, tends to take the signal out of the muscle fibers that shut down the blood flow to the parts of the structure that are built to thrive, regenerate, heal, rest, reproduce. Tends to open those muscle fibers and allow the restoration of blood flow to the rest of the structure, rather than those who've lived in chronic hostility and fear tend to be locked into that mode where the blood is shunted to the larger muscles, skeletal muscles ready to fight and run, and to the lungs. So it's an important part of the healing process. So once again, if grief surfaces, I remember my true identity. I breathe. As I bring love present to my mind and heal all thought disorders related to loss. So that's our mind shifter for today, and the emotion that we're going to talk about. Miss Jeanie, do you have any thoughts to add to that?
No. I am in the process of creating the emotion page, so I'll have the link in the notes. Yeah.
Awesome. And seeing as how we've talked a little bit about mind shifters. I'm going to just open it up if anybody wants to call in, and we're going to do it a little differently. Over the last week or so, we've talked about the movie that we had, or TV series that we watched. It was called In the Dark, and how much of a really a psychopath the woman who's the star of this series is. And I literally, each month, part of the Mind Shifters and Still Point Breathing Club is that each month people get a new set of 13 mind shifters based on a particular topic. And having watched this particular series, it was just like a whole download of a set of mind shifters that came from the idea of, having watched this woman being seduced by her hostility and fear-based mind and her addiction to having her way. It ended up, really giving me the gift of a whole set of mind shifters that just a second here. So this set of mind shifters for this month, there are 13 of them, and when we do open up and invite people to do to give us numbers for mind shifters, we usually use 2 numbers. There are several different series. Like if we ask you to give us 2 numbers to select a mind shifter, right now there are 17 different series. So we'd say, give us a number from 1 to 17, and then there are 13 in each set. So we'd say, give us a number from, 1 to 17, and then 13 in each set. So give us a number from 1 to 13. And the combination of those 2 numbers would be the way we would select a mind shifter for you. But seeing as how we came up with this particular list, I'm going to just invite everybody to pick a number from 1 to 13. And if anybody would like to get a mind shifter from that particular list, then just, either text Jeanie or myself or hit 1 and give us your number. And when you give us that number, we'll give you your mind shifter for the healing of the beguiling ego mind. So if anyone has a number you'd like to give us.
We have a hand up.
Great, let's go for it.
It's 541. I believe it's Miss Celinda.
Yes, it is.
Hey there, young lady. Welcome.
I'm good. I'm fine. Would you like my 2 numbers?
Well, actually, we just tell you what. Hold on to the 2 numbers. So you pick 2, but then separately take the first one that comes to mind and just give me one number from 1 to 13.
Okay. 2.
2. Okay. So got your pen ready?
Yes.
So you're going to get a bonus. You'll get 2 mind shifters today. You'll get this one from the newest list, which is list number 17, and then we'll get your 2 numbers and go back and see what you come up with. So 17.2 is ego offerings, comma.
Pardon?
Ego offerings.
Ego,
comma,
like the bird?
E-G-O, edging God out, ego.
Oh, thank you. It sounded like ego. Ego.
Okay, ego offerings,
Okay.
comma. Those tainted with even a touch of fear. And or hostility. Are always inferior. So ego offerings, comma, of fear and or hostility, comma, are always inferior.
Okay.
You got that one? Okay, then what are your 2 numbers?
8 and 4.
Okay, so I'm going to section 8 on the mind shifters now, and this is a section on dealing with power person issues. So 8.4 is the more mistakes I made. So 8.4, the more mistakes I made, the more my parents cherished and were there for me. So 8.4 from the ever-expanding mind shifters list is the more mistakes I made, the more my parents cherished and were there for me. Are you breathing?
Yes. No. Yes.
Good. You are now? Okay.
Yes, I am, because I was in the middle of a memory when you asked me if I were breathing, and no, I wasn't.
Would you care to share that? What was happening?
Oh, yeah. It's just I remember one time when I was 9 years old, and I was in the 4th grade, and I was just introduced to division, and
right.
I couldn't get it at all. And I took a test, and I missed just every single question on this test. Well, I was devastated. So I was walking home, and I crumpled the paper up, and I threw it in the ditch. And usually I didn't confide with my mom at all, but this time she asked me what was the matter, because I was obviously upset. And I said,
right.
I don't get division at all. And she sat down with me and worked with me in her unusual mode of infinite patience until it must have been like an hour or more. Until
what a great memory to come up.
Right, until I got it.
Sweet.
Yeah, really.
Well, that's a nice nice connection to recall and touch into.
Oh, it's beautiful, beautiful. And I had a couple other thoughts, if it's in line with what you want to hear today, because in relation to your show, I think it was yesterday. Oh, no, it wouldn't have been yesterday, Friday's show. You in the book, you mentioned at least 5 religions that arose out of the Aramaic culture. And lately you have been mentioning 6. Is there another one that you have discovered or think that possibly might have come out?
It is suspected that the Buddha actually spoke Aramaic.
Well, I remember you saying that before, but
we can't verify that, but that would be the 6th one. We've got Zoroastrianism, we've got the Baha'i faith, Christianity, Judaism, and Zoroastrianism. That we know the originators were all Aramaic speaking, and
You said Zoroaster twice.
Oh, did I say so? Okay, then let me go back again.
Okay,
so we've got the Mohammedan. Mohammed.
Yeah, the Islamic.
Yeah, Mohammed spoke. Yeah. And Baha'i, he was back in the 1800s, so he's relatively modern, but his language of origin was also Aramaic.
Now, are the Sufis still officially connected with the Islamic Church, or have they gone on their own path?
They have, as I understand it, they are a sect of Islam. Yes.
Okay. I was wondering about the Celtics because I don't know if you're familiar with J. Philip Newell or not, Newell. He's a Scottish gentleman who is preaching Christianity in the context of Celtic understanding, and it is amazingly similar to the Aramaic understanding of life.
Well, the Celtic language is Aramaic. I remember when the Queen, who just recently passed, was she on the throne for almost 70 years, when her coronation was
Michael,
happening,
I hear
it was
you
on
talking,
television,
but you're not coming through the phone, or at least not my phone.
A group of translators were working on the manuscript, the Khaboris, and one of the translators started to translate the coronation dialogue, which was in Aramaic. And the coronation stone of the monarchs of England is at least in fact reputed to be the actual stone of the throne of David. So the English monarch is coronated in Aramaic. So yeah, that would tie in with Scotland and yes, the Celtic language.
Beautiful. And
as well as some of the Native American languages.
Right. Well, my father was a British Israelite. I don't know if you're familiar with that group of Christians or not. And
not particularly,
now
no.
that you mentioned, yeah, pardon?
Not particularly. I'm not familiar with that, no.
Well, I used to resist listening to him at all. But when you just mentioned the stones of the throne, or would you explain that again? The stones come from the throne of David, but they're what? Where are they in the monarchy?
So the stone that sits under the throne of the British monarch is the actual stone that David was was under the throne of David when his coronation or his, ascending to the throne took place.
And that is the history or the story of that, okay, that there's some connection there.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because I'm not interested in running after the British Israelite religion, but Dad was definitely into it as us being the throne of David. Yeah, that. Now I understand where he might have come to that context.
Out of the house of David, right?
Yeah. My father was a very gentle man. I mean, he used to take the Gideon Bibles into the prison in Walla Walla, which is one of the most locked down institutions in the whole United States.
Really?
And, yeah, it's bad news. And anyway, my mother, whose brother ends up in Walla Walla prison and San Quentin and a whole bunch of places. So it's really exciting family dynamics there, yeah. And anyway, the other question I had to ask you, I think, was about Mr. Lamsa. You mentioned we were talking about him, where he almost
George Lamsa, right?
His life was actually, what's his first name?
George. Dr.
Okay.
George Lamsa.
Was he a Sufi by chance?
No, he was a native Aramaic speaker.
Okay.
His native language was Aramaic. He was from, if I remember correctly, I believe he was from Lebanon.
Oh, which reminds me of
his history, I think, is in the Enlightenment book, Kavor's manuscript.
Yes. Oh, good, because the Enlightenment book, I probably ran into it and forgot about it. And he was working for Unity at that time when he got threatened? Was that just general Christian overseers of the faith that were threatening him, or was that actually Unity, or was that, because I always have a great deal of respect for Unity, or can you even say?
Unity supported George Lamsa's work, but the people who were living in a fear-based religious mind were threatened by what he was bringing forward, and so that's where the threats on his life came from.
Oh, within
he wasn't going along with the old fear-based dogma.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. I just was curious. Did he ever write any books about the Aramaic gospel at all?
Oh, all kinds of them. Yeah, there's several. Light on the Gospel, More Light on the Gospel, Old Testament Light, Idioms of the Bible Explained. There's several books by George Lamsa.
Good.
Some of them have gone out of print, and some of them have been re-edited and published by Rocco Errico. Rocco was a protege of George Lamsa. And so if you look on Rocco's site, Rocco's website is Noura, Noohra.com, and Noura in Aramaic means light. So if you look at Noura.com, you'll see the publications that Rocco, I think he still carries Lamsa's books, or at least what are still in print, the ones that are still in print. You can sometimes find in used bookstores or online used George Lamsa's books, and Rocco has republished several, re-edited. He was authorized by Lamsa to edit his work and republish them.
That's perfect, because I'm doing a collection now. I also want to let you know, I was going to share it with Dr. Tim as well, that I really appreciated his elaboration on the 5-step mental process of the worksheet. And I realized that between that and Magda's 2 versions, that I can now put more energy and thought into the worksheets and actual commitment towards. One thing I have been playing with is I'm actually writing down the 5 mental steps and adding what I think is important to them for me. And like the emotion, of course, is on there, but the thought behind it, my story, my thought that drives my emotion. And also I love the mass canceling at the end, and anything from the worksheet that really resonates and goes bingo for me, I'm adding that to it. But it's nice within the choices I've made and the jobs I've taken on, and the relationships I have, that I can have something very short that I can write down, gets to the point, and doesn't get me down the rabbit hole, which too much wording will do immediately. And I wanted to also share with you, Michael and Jeanie, that the word corrupt is, in my definition, it was used in my family and equated with evil and bad, and like a bad seed kind of thing, like that old movie, The Bad Seed. And so I don't use that at all. I will put in at faulty, or I will put in erroneous, or I'll just substitute another word. And I thought I would share that with you. I understand the intent of using that word, and for me, it just doesn't resonate at all. And so knowing that I can do that I have the freedom to do that, to make that worksheet appropriate for my understanding of myself, life, world around me.
Yeah, you might want to maybe shift and look slightly differently, and that is that the use of the word corrupt there is used in the computer world. When a file becomes electronically jumbled and no longer useful, it's corrupt data. It's been corrupted. It's not its original form. And so that's the idea there. Whenever hostility or fear is moving in us, the data that's at the root of that experience has been corrupted in the same way that something in the computer, a file, has been corrupted and therefore will not operate properly. So when you realize that the data at the root, whenever hostility or fear are moving, that the data at the root of that hostility or fear perceptual construct has been corrupted and will never give us a proper construct any more than a computer, when the data has been corrupted, will give us a screen full of accurate information. So that's the idea of that definition.
And sort of like sabotage, throwing the sabot into the machinery.
It would be the result of a bolt being thrown into the machine. That's about it, yes. That's a very good way to say it.
And see, I'd always seen corrupt as, the aluminum gets it, or metal gets corrupted, and it's bad.
Similar.
Throw it away.
It's damaged.
Hard.
Yeah. It just means it's damaged. It's no longer going to serve its function.
Right. But the use of the word in my family is get rid of it. It's no good.
And the use, so when you get to the computer, the way we're using the word, it's saying bring correction to it, bring healing.
Right. I understand that. And I also understand the little girl that said that she was bad, and if she didn't measure up and get it right or whatever, that she would be thrown out. Yeah.
So that construct of the mind, that construct of the mind, that little girl would do really well to recognize that construct came from corrupt data, and when she brings forward what's at the root of it to the presence of love, it's going to dissolve and correction will come, healing will occur.
Right. So the word corrupt was corrupted, right?
Well, no, that's what it means. It means it's no longer
fit
for its original intent.
Right. Well, that's what that was a joke, Michael. My family corrupted the true meaning of corrupt.
So any other thoughts for you, young lady?
I think that's it for the moment, and I hope I didn't disturb your peace of mind. I just had to make
I'm doing fine.
Me too.
Good. Awesome.
There's nothing like a little humor to grease the cosmic grease, right?
There you go.
You take care. I love you both.
All right. Have an awesome day, and everybody, appreciate you joining us. We're down at the last minute or so, so have the best year yet of your eternal life. It is an awesome gift to give the world, and the world certainly in need of it, and each of us is capable of giving it. Blessings. Bye-bye.